السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام. So ready, Sami?
Ready? Yes.
Okay, here he put it even on the screen.
Okay.
Sign for all the online that you attended.
Assalamu alaikum. Abdul Nasser, how are you? क्या हाल है? शरीर से चमक रहे हैं आज। चमक रहे हैं? ऊपर से रोशनी आ आपकी आंखों को कसूर है। Assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you?
How are you? You have a presentation today. Tomorrow, you were having something.
Yeah.
An event.
यार ये इधर नहीं शो हो रहा।
Yeah. So you're very busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried. Yeah, I couldn't understand. Yeah.
शेख ये इधर नहीं शो हो रहा। ब्रदर हसन, शेख ब्रदर हसन, शेख इधर आए ना जरा। यार ये इधर नहीं शो हो रही।
वो करना पड़ेगा, डुप्लीकेट कर दो उसको।
हाँ हाँ खाना इधर से करें, इधर से भी है। Yes, yes, from the speaker.
Can you see my screen?
1 minute, please.
Okay.
ये नहीं लिखा है।
आ गया?
Process of Teams को।
Where do you live? You live far away from here? Why? It's not far away from here.
Can you speak, please?
Yes, brother.
Now, can you speak, please?
Yes, I'm speaking.
Yeah, comes there.
Yes.
But increase the sound. Yes.
Brother Sammy, can you please repeat?
Yes, brother.
Yes, we now listen to
No, those that you did not.
1 minute,
attend,
please.
Do not sign.
This I was not.
Okay. You missed them. Oh, I knew it. You did miss them. Let's get it 1 or 2 more minutes. I think this clock is a little bit faster than it should be.
How are you, Professor?
It was a nice meeting yesterday, a nice kind of celebration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you talk about Zakat in Pakistan yesterday? Did you talk about Zakat?
No, but this someone sent it on.
Yeah,
I mentioned a little bit on Zakat, but there was I don't know when was that even. Abdul Qadir Shashi sent me whatever that connection for a speech on Zakat in Pakistan. There must be old, yani, must be a long time old. I don't know. I didn't. Put it on. I didn't hear it.
So what is it about? Was it failure? Zakah in Pakistan?
It was not failure really. At the beginning, it was doing very well.
Okay.
And it was entrusted to a director who was known as very honest person at the beginning. But later, when Bhutto came, forced on that administration to use it at the wish of the prime minister. So there was a little change, but that wasn't really a drastic one anyway, because it could be changed with another prime minister. But later, there was somebody tried to use a loophole in the act itself. And that loophole was that it gave option to Shia to pay their zakah through to their own imams instead of being subject to zakah like anybody else. So that loophole was used by some lawyers, apparently, lawyers who didn't like zakah, and they made it. They considered it like discriminatory, not treating everybody equally. So it was made, instead of being made obligatory also on the Shia, it was made optional to everybody. And that was a big drawback. It went back really. Now it's almost nothing. So practically, it is eliminated. And then Musharraf came later and put the last, I think, nail in the coffin. And also he eliminated the Islamic banks, that the act of Islamic bank that was in Pakistan for all banks. Although the application was only formal, not real. But still, it could be transformed into a real application instead of making it just eliminating it completely. So all the government bank and also the private banks that were there, that were according to the law, must be according to Sharia, they went back to interest basis. And a new bank came, Mizan Bank came, and then other small banks that really don't make any effect on the Pakistani economy. See, the serious issue in Pakistan is that you want an Islamic state without Muslims. With lousy people, they don't care. And the expression was clear yesterday. Most Pakistani girls who were attending yesterday were without cover, for instance, and most likely most Pakistani boys who were there, probably they don't pray either. So Islam without Muslims, this is the way it is in Pakistan. I remember, probably you know him, Dr. Anis Ahmed.
Yes.
Once took me. He was like the vice chancellor of this Rafah University, and so he took me once, long time ago, to visit the judge of the Sharia court, and Sharia court was made like a court to see to it that everything is in compliance with Islam. And when this judge of that Sharia court noticed that, oh, I'm American and coming from America. At that time, I was coming directly from America. I wasn't in, before IDP this. He was pleased to tell me that, oh gosh, how can you implement ideas of 1400 years ago and you want to implement them in this age? These are unsuitable, unimplementable. That was, this is the judge who is supposed to be supervising the implementation. That was his opinion. It's when you have Islam without Muslims, you have that kind of. time, I compared, I mean, that was after the death of the late Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi. Definitely Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi was a great person. But I was invited to talk in this, يعني the usual, what they make it, is it called obituary or what is it called after 40 days of his death? Yeah, so that was done in New York because, he died in America, but then he was taken to be buried in Pakistan. So in that, I compared between Hassan al-Banna and Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi. And I mentioned that because of the background and the training of each one of them excelled in an area that is different than the other, but kind of neglected the other area. Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi was excellent in producing ideas, and he talked about ideas, the Khilafah, the supremacy of law, and all these. But whereas Hassan al-Banna educated people and trained because he was a primary school teacher. Hassan al-Banna was a primary school teacher, so he made the system of what they call it, al-Usra, that in the Usra, you sit 6, 7 people together with a leader, and he trained them, he made them memorize Quran, he supervised them in understanding Islam and becoming more committed and advise them and all that. So, and this never existed in the Jama'at Islami until late, yani, and I remember in the 80s, again, I don't remember when in the 80s, but I visited Jama'at Islami and spent two days with them in Mansoura, and there was Mia Tufail Muhammad at that time. Before or after that, I also visited the Qazi Hussein Ahmed, who was also head of the Jamaat Islami at one time. I slept in his house in Qazi Hussein Ahmed. I spent 3-4 days with him in Peshawar. Yeah. My daughter was with me at that time, and of course, and she also slept in the house. And she went with his daughters, and they were chatting together, and we were together. So until that time, they did not have the concept of trying to educate people directly. So the only thing you do, you publish in newspapers or you issue a book. But that does not really give that kind of training, which was done with little ideas in Egypt. The development of ideas was really very shrinking in the Egyptian part, in the Ikhwan Muslimin of Egypt. They didn't have idea except we go back to Islam and so. And for a constitution that is based on Islam, but all these, when you ask really in detail, what does that mean? There's no answer. Whereas Abu al-Mawdudi has the answers for this. He discussed these issues, but he was not. But anyway, the Pakistani people in that meeting in New York didn't like that comparison. I was honest in that comparison, in fact, and I was admiring both of them, but they didn't like him because how come I say that he was good in one area but was not good in the other? He should have been good in all areas. This is the way they want it. The same thing, Ikhwan Muslimin also. They want Hassan al-Banna to be excellent in everything. Alaykum salam. Although there are things that are awful in the Ikhwan Muslimin, and I say it out of 30 years experience with them, and I was part of them from a member in the Usra until I became a member of the highest executive committee. So with all that,
Why did you leave, Professor? Why did you leave the party?
I left for the same reason I advised my children, all of them, that the ideas of Ikhwan Muslimin are good. Their projects usually are good. Do projects with them, but don't be ever part of their administrative structure. Because in administrative structure, you find things that are very unpleasant, very awful. For instance, I was part of the committee that was to review the constitution of Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin. And I insisted that we shouldn't accept students. We start at least from people who are responsible, 18 years old, graduate of schools. The other members insisted on no. We should start with the students, even from 12 years old, and we consider them member and all that. This is the kind of thing that you find. Take the pledge of allegiance of the Ikhwan al-Muslimin is a pledge of allegiance that can be given to a government, not to an organization that is by definition is voluntary organization. If I don't like it, I leave it next morning. There's nothing obligatory in it. So but the pledge of allegiance is horrible, really. And if you criticize the pledge of allegiance, you become almost half kafir for the Ikhwan Muslimin, because the pledge of allegiance was made by Hassan al-Banna. As if you are criticizing Hassan al-Banna. How do you dare criticize Hassan al-Banna? That's horrible. This is why in Ikhwan Muslimin it's normal when you become more educated, more learning more, you quit. You cannot survive within Ikhwan Muslimin. If you become more aware, more alert, more educated, then you definitely have to quit. You cannot continue there.
Micro level, their policies are good. They are fine, but administratively they have.
Strategically, you see, when you take and this mentality of school teachers remained with them. It's not only really Hassan al-Banna who was a school teacher. Most of Ikhwan Muslimin, most of leaders of Ikhwan Muslimin everywhere in all countries are school teachers. So the mentality of school teacher was carried with them when they worked in politics. So both, whether in Syria or in Jordan or in Lebanon maybe was the little bit more wiser than others because of the existence of different kind of challenges. But in all over the Muslim countries, wherever there is Ikhwan Muslimin, including Egypt, of course, the mentality of a school teacher is one that prevails. And this is basically, in my opinion, the reason of their political mistakes in Egypt, because they were behaving in the mentality of school teacher.
Pakistan now a new institution has been found with the name Rahmatul Alameen. Professor Anis is heading that. And that is specifically to work with the youngsters and educate them for the Sira of the Prophet. And a new university is also established with the name Al-Qadir. So Al-Qadir.
Qadis?
Al-Qadir.
Al-Qadir.
Yeah. And they are searching now for the intellectuals.
Anis, and I know him very well. Anis, we lived together for more than about 10 years.
He teaches in Dawa Academy.
Yeah, but he is still, I think, the president of the Rifa. Yeah, he is still there. Yeah. Okay. Ready, Asami?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Let me put the recorder first.
I'm recording.
Oh, it is already there, recorded.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Sami. Okay, session
Bismillah
4.
ar-Rahman
Now
ar-Rahim.
for the, one moment, for the midterm exam,
Okay.
I think we'll make it after the Eid. It's okay, because we need 4 more sessions, so we are at least halfway in the class. Although, you notice that the month of May and maybe the first week of June we will have double classes every week. So to cover up all the material, we'll try to make the exam in the off time, not with the time of the class itself. Okay, midterm exam.
Allah, we can make it multiple choice. I think it's a good idea.
And also essay questions
Say in the final or
in both. I think in both we need essay questions and multiple choice إن شاء الله. طيب اتفضل يا سامي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Today we will talk about ethics in Islamic finance. We will talk about critical points in this title. Islamic finance, moral values, ethical axiom of Islamic finance, the objective of Sharia from the prohibition of interest, channel of finance translate into morally loaded axiom, ethical value of justice, Islamic finance and social justice, ethical value of realism, ethical value of moral screen, the value of balance, conventional finance and ethical values, and reasons of financial crisis and financial failure. At the beginning, channels of Islamic finance, sale and lease and sharing. What is the ethics? The ethics refers to a system code of principles, morals that guide action, typically derived from a set of values. Islamic finance reflects the moral value of justice, fairness, protection, balance and equity, realism, truthfulness, commitment to no harm, rather creating benefits and other values.
Well, we notice here, I do not subscribe, and rather I criticize harshly the idea that Islamic finance needs to be committed morally, and it's not really committed because it does not give or treat negatively companies that use women, giving them less salaries or discriminate or that discriminate against or those that companies that are not committed to the environment criteria for protecting environment and all that. I see this is a very, very side issue, and this is a very, very also small issue, not really the basic issue. You forgot that charging interest is at the utmost lack of injustice and the utmost violation of injustice, and come to talk to these small issues that all they need to be corrected is some little advice. So I do not definitely accept the accusation that is aired very often by some writers, especially non-Muslim writers and some Muslim who were affected by them, that talk about Islamic banks are not doing like what the Royal Bank of Canada is doing by avoiding any companies that buy things from Bangladesh with the higher labor, minor labor, or anything like that. Okay, well, that's good. What the Royal Bank of Canada is doing is good. And this is also need to be done by Islamic banks. And the lack of this thing should not really blur our vision that while they lack this, they are doing a great commitment to justice by eliminating interest from their transaction. This is a lot more greater. Yani if you want to weigh things, this is 2% and that's 95%. So you can't just overlook this and say, oh, they have problem really. They are negative moral. They apply negative moral, but not positive moral. Gosh, there is nothing more positive than working on sale and lease and sharing, working on property, working on, if you want to earn, then you have to own. There's no more justice and no more stronger ethicality than this. And all these writers say, oh, Islamic banks apply negative only by prohibition riba. Well, prohibition riba is not a small thing. It's a very, very big thing. It's a lot bigger than all other things. So having that balance in the thinking, I think, is very, very important. So this ethicality is built in Islamic finance, is not something that is added. Okay.
Yes.
How do you explain, you said it's a great form of injustice, interest. So maybe what are some rational reasons for injustice? How do we explain
In
to
interest?
non-Muslims? Yeah, interest.
It's in exactly the simplest form that was mentioned by all our scholars in the past, that interest is an exchange of an amount of money for an illusion. What is the counterpart of that amount of money? The increment in the loan. It's only an illusion that the other party may make profit or may not. And even if he makes profit, the other party, the borrower, the profit is done in his own property, not in your own property, Mr. Lender. So how come you make a claim that what the verse says, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِّبًا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُو عِندَ اللَّهِ. In reality, your property is not able to generate any increment. So how come, by what virtue you may claim an increment on your property, and your property is merely a debt, and the debt does not create increment? So even if the other party makes any return on the use of that amount that he borrowed from you, that return is made and done by the other party's effort and the other party's property, because the loan transfers the property. And so the exchange of in the contract with riba, in the interest-based riba, the exchange is an amount of money for an illusion, for an expectation. What is expectation other than illusion? Yani, illusion is more indicative word for it, really, because expectation may be negative or positive and all that. So this is what is the greatest injustice in it. Now, this injustice, does it cause other forms of injustice? Yes, it does, because very likely, and there are studies to that effect, that it is a major contributor in the concentration of wealth in the economy. But the social justice is another issue. Very often the mind of many writers jump to social justice. Well, interest is an economic issue. So we are talking economics, not social. Social justice could be for any other, caused for another, by other reasons. And of course, the use of property power to create other effects, political or social, that's a form of injustice, but that is abuse of the power. This is why, if you read in the Islamic history, early Islamic history, when Abu Bakr became the head of state, and it's not assigned by Allah, it's only elected by people. When he became the head of state, he said he did not attack richness in contrast with poverty, but he said, the rich among you is poor in my eye until I take the right from him, the right of the poor from him. And the strong among you is weak in my eye until I force him to abide by the law. So this is the issue, abusing wealth is very likely when there is wealth concentration. And definitely that takes us to other arena of politics and arena of the social effect of politics. Of course, that will add to it. But the major thing is that it is an exchange of a property for an illusion, for expectation.
When we come to Islamic finance, ethics, Islamic finance, property, some of private property. So how we general ethics, example, how we reflected to it, general principles of Islamic finance, ethics of Islamic finance, Islamic of Islam.
I didn't understand the question. Can you
Okay.
elaborate on it in different words?
Okay. In my understanding, I see that Islamic finance mostly focus on protection of private property instead of property in general, whether public or whether private. So last class we took general Islamic ethical value of Islam in general. We studied last semester. In particular, we studied internal screen as well as external screen. So how we reflected to this, how we reflected to general principle of ethics in Islam and Islamic finance, how we relate to that, this.
Definitely Islamic finance is part of Islamic economics. And Islamic economics is part of the Islamic system of life, Islamic way of life completely. But in Islamic finance, we talk about the provision of finance, whether in terms of goods or services or in terms of cash or credit. And we deal with it here, the idea of what are the ethics in it here. So we kind of like subset of total ethics of Islamic economics. And of course, it's a subset of the ethics of Islam in general.
We focus on provision of private goods, private property. That's the protection of private property and how we deal with this.
Well, no, finance can be also provision of goods, services, or means of payment to government branches. So it could be to the public property also. It can be private property or public property. And where it comes from, it may come from both also. An Islamic finance institution may be owned by the government, right? It can be like any bank that can be owned by the government. Rather, in the reform, if you remember when we talked about the reform of finance, we called for the creation of a standby finance provider that will protect the real economy from any mistakes that may happen in the finance institutions. So that the crisis will not be transmitted from the finance sector into the real sector, like what happened especially in 2008. Clearly it was a financial failure, but that financial failure was transmitted quickly to the real market by the inability of the real market to get finance, to get the credit that they need from the financial institutions, because the financial institutions were under stress. So here we talk about the ethicality of that subset of the finance transactions.
I'm asking this question because of, yeah, I read some authors arguing that the main objective of prohibition of riba is to protection of private property. It's the protection from of private property from injustice. They articulate, yeah, like protection of private property, just instead of property.
Well, I mean, definitely this is one of it, but not necessarily private. يعني I think this private you kind of added it. It's protection of the property right, whether it is private or it's public, or it is waqf, or it is community, any kind of property right. And we noticed that we have 4 kinds of property right. And I do not subscribe to the confusion that was created in our classical fiqh on the idea of waqf. Who owns the waqf? This is a question that has never been answered in our classical fiqh, and everybody admired the escape from the answer that was created by Abu Yusuf rahimahullah when he said, as if it is owned by God. على حكم ملك الله. Now, what is the meaning? Well, the word of على حكم ملك الله, what does it mean? It means nothing really. يعني literally, it means nothing, but only an escape. Instead of saying, well, I argue that the waqf is owned by its objective. The waqf property is owned. It has an ownership. The ownership is its objective. This is a property that is assigned to this objective. And by that nature, by the nature of the owner of the waqf, it requires always a mutawalli or a manager to take authority. And that authority of the manager is limited, is not like any other manager, could be determined by the principal who appoints him, like a wakil. So the mutawalli of waqf is not simply a wakil. He is a wakil, or a kind, the basis of wakala is there, but a special kind of wakil that is not authorized to do certain kind of action. He can take some action, he can promote the waqf, but he cannot, for instance, take a loan on the waqf. He cannot endanger the waqf property in any form of endangering it. He shouldn't be able to, he is not able to endanger or expose it to risk of abolition, of demolition, of banishing. He shouldn't be able to do that. So he's a wakil, but special kind of wakil, because the objective of the waqf is done on that basis. And the objective of the waqf is not able to extend authority beyond what is there in the wishes or the conditions that were made by the founder. Of course, the founder is gone, and now the founder made these limitations, and they stick there, and they relate to the objective. So I argue, I refuse the argument of Abu Yusuf rahimahullah, as if it is owned by God. We are all owned by God. So it doesn't make any difference at all, and doesn't add any meaning really. He means it is very much protected by law. Yes, it is protected by law, but it is protected by law because of its nature. It's a property owned by its objective, and its objective cannot make judgment on giving any authority. So the authority is already limited when it was given, when the waqf was created. But anyway, it's for protection of any property right, not only for the private property right. Islamic finance, the elimination of riba in Islamic finance protects all property right. But that is one thing. The more important really is that how can you earn without owning? يعني the fundamental moral principle that the Islamic finance makes earning by owning. You do not earn by any other means other than owning an asset that can generate increment. Yes.
The objectives of the WACF, can the initial objectives of the WACF upon the time, can it be modified or can it be amended, let's say? Because, for example, a person made a WACF for educational purposes, for example, right? But there is a lack of the medical institutions or the hospital or something else. So upon the time, can some of them, due to some reasons, be justified and amended due to the needs of the
No,
current?
essentially, no. As a matter of fact, essentially, no, because it's limited to that only, and it's a done deal. It's a fait accompli, as they say. Fait accompli, by the way, and it is used in English, not only in French. Fait accompli, yani done deal, and it is already done deal. You cannot change it unless, and this is being discussed in classical fiqh for details, unless the objective cannot be fulfilled anymore. Doesn't exist. Like the children, the education in this village, and education doesn't, this village is already destroyed and nobody lives in it. So you transfer it to the nearby villages. Take it, but to keep it to the same objective, the closest objective to its original document. It cannot be taken from education to medical, for instance. Yes, definitely. The founder, you mean, of the waqf? Well, we are assuming the founder is gone. Yani after the founder is gone, you cannot make any change. But while the founder is there, yes, the founder can make changes in the objective and can make changes in the waqf itself. In fact, this by retrieving the waqf to his personal property again. Yes, yes, no doubt about it. يعني,
It's irrevocable. It's once what.
this is correct. This is also correct. Both are correct. It is also correct because the waqf essentially is irrevocable. But if the person needs it, why do you do you be harsh on that person who is a benevolent? And there's no limit that you can put on benevolent persons. Yani, as the verse itself, the verse is great really in this regard, and it applies in all corners of the Islamic fiqh. ما على المحسنين من سبيل. This is verse number 90 in Surah number 9. Surah Tawbah, I think, is number 9, right? Yeah. And verse 90. ما على المحسنين من سبيل. This is a great verse. يعني, how could you make limitations on a benevolent? A benevolent became in need, and he knew he had that, he made in the past that property. Why doesn't he take from it? Yes, most fuqaha say, no, haram, and cannot be. But there are fuqaha also. And by the way, yani, at one time we were discussing something, and the colleague who was discussing with me asked me, did anybody before you say that? I told him, this is the approach of following your ancestors, your forefathers. But the Islamic approach, this is the approach of following your forefathers, which is intensively condemned in the Quran. And give me a counter argument. Don't tell me who said that before you. Who said that before you? This is a wrong question. A question of a person who is only imitator and doesn't think of himself on his own. So think of your own and find a counter reason for that. And I don't see a counter reason for this matter. If that person became in need, why not taking part of his own waqf? Rather, to make issues much clearer and don't allow for any potential dispute, let's try to issue a template of waqf document. In this template, we say there are conditions that must be there in any template, in any waqf document. And there are other optional conditions, you make them the way you like you determine the objective. But for instance, the condition of the growth of principle of waqf, in my opinion, must be there, because life taught us that anything that does not grow will become small, because life grows. And the Prophet ﷺ also told us similar to that. He said, "Man istawa yawmahu fahuwa maghbun." And maghbun means that loser. Maghbun, the one who got given, yani given against him, is a loser who got things for more than, he paid a lot more than what they deserve. He's a loser. So a person whose 2 days are the same, yesterday and today and tomorrow, regardless of the age, yani age is irrelevant really. Okay, if your 2 days are the same, you are a loser. If you don't grow, everybody else is growing. So if you don't grow, you are losing, definitely. So a waqf that does not grow is a loser. So we need the growth condition should be in the template, that any waqf could be in the law to say that any waqf has to have certain percentage, and minimum this percentage should be, for instance, 10% or 20%. If you don't increase the principle of the waqf will, with time, will die. This is one condition. A condition that if the founder became in need, he has right to take from the waqf. He has right to eliminate the waqf even for that. If he became, suppose the waqf is a house building, and that person became homeless for any reason. Yani, I don't know if you heard that story. Some of you, none of you read Arabic except you and you, yeah, two only. You guys all don't read Arabic, you read also. Have you heard, or probably it came to me as one of these, forward things that are forwarded on the WhatsApp. The story of Khashoggi. What's his first name? Not this one who was killed. Not Jamal. The older Khashoggi who was a billionaire. I forgot his name. He's his cousin. Somebody claimed he's his older brother. No, he's not his older brother. He's his cousin. You know, Khashoggi is the Turkish family that lived in Medina. This is where their origin are Turk, but they were living in Medina anyway. And يعني Jamal, I know him very well. I know him since he was student in Terre Haute, Indiana. He got his bachelor's from there, and I don't think he made any study beyond the bachelor anyway. So I knew him when since he was there. I was in Indianapolis, and we used to visit Terre Haute, give the khutbah, Friday khutbah, and so on, and almost every week. Terre Haute was about 60 miles from Indianapolis. It's Terre Haute, Indiana, within the state of Indiana. So I knew him very well when I lived in Jeddah also for 15 years. He was there in Jeddah, and I met with him several times. He knew me, I knew him very well. And he even once told my son, that when he met my son, one of my children, he told him, well, your father was the one who urged me to pray. Without his urge, I wouldn't be praying. Rahmatullah alayhi. He was a reasonable person, good person. Anyway, definitely he was killed unjustly, and rather in the utmost kind of unjust. It's horrible the way he was killed, and I have no doubt that he was killed literally by the MBS, not by even those agents. The MBS himself, he definitely was the one who gave the order and the one who was informed about the killing immediately from inside the consulate. This came clearly in the news. Anyway, but the other one who was a billionaire, and then he became very poor, extremely poor, that he was not able to pay. He died in Cairo, was not able to pay for a ticket to take him from Jeddah to Cairo. And it was paid by one of his old friends for him. And of course, he divorced his wife, or his wife couldn't live with him anymore for a long time before he died, and all these kind of things. He died miserable. Everybody says that. But the things may change with life. So definitely the founder, this kind of clause should be there to remove any doubt in all kind of waqf.
Prof, can I talk about something about revoke back of waqf?
About the waqf? لا, you cannot talk about the waqf. خلاص. We will finishing the talk about waqf. In other words, we need some conditions to be in every waqf. And
sorry, Professor, forgive me, I beg your pardon. But did somebody before you have this?
yeah, this is what is described in the Quran, that we've seen our forefathers doing that. For the temporary, for the retrieving the waqf back to private property, yes, the law and in Kuwait, I don't know whether it was enacted or not, but it was a draft law in Kuwait adopted this concept that the waqif can take back his waqf to his own private property. There may be some exceptions, like a mosque, when you make a mosque, or when you make a cemetery, because cemetery, and these exceptions are reasonable. Cemetery is difficult to use it again, after it is being used for burial and all people underground, and also a mosque. This condition doesn't apply to a mosque, but it applies to all other awqaf. Yes, there are some people who took that idea before me, but there are many ideas that I say that many people did not take it before me, and I challenge even some of the schools of fiqh. Definitely there are mistakes in our schools of fiqh, all of them without any exception. But definitely we should take these on a way of in a scientific way. When they are wrong, we say it, this is wrong, and we don't shy at all from saying it is wrong, regardless of whether there is anybody else before me or with me says that. Definitely, and we should only counter the argument by an argument, not by what our ancestors adopted without giving argument. Okay. طيب كمل يا سامي.
Okay, so ethical value are integrated in the structures and instruments of Islamic finance. One of the most important application of justice in Islamic finance is prohibition of riba. The objective of Sharia from the prohibition of interest, affirming the Sharia characteristic of realism and maintaining its internal consistency in not allowing any transaction that is not a real life activity. Second point, upholding the sanctity of property right and respecting the consistency of entitlements with the right of ownership. Disallowing debt, trade, and exchange along with similarly unrealistic, pure speculative transactions that are not based on real production of exchange, such as creating unreal assets like index units, probabilities, because these activities do not create value and only transfer wealth between individuals. redirecting or rechanneling the human and other resources used in purely speculative, non-value adding activities such as trading that toward real production and exchange of goods and services.
Like one moment, ya Sami, and you notice in one of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I want to bring to your attention the context of it. Sale of fruits because before they become visible. At the beginning, yani. So I sell you the fruit of this tree, of this orchard, but the fruits are not yet coming out at the time of blossoming or before time. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used a statement as argument for the prohibition of this kind of transaction. That he said, by what virtue do you got the property of your brother? The price that he paid you, by what virtue you got it? If the fruits never come, so what justifies your earning? This is the idea here is, yani the Prophet used it as an argument. He sets, in fact, a principle which is very important. And that principle is a humanitarian principle. It belongs to all humanity, not only to Muslims. I mean, by what virtue you take this property, for instance, and you didn't give anything in exchange, and also there was no growth to get, there was nothing. What did you sell him? You sold him nothing. You sold him illusion, that fruit that may come or may not come. But he allowed, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed sale of fruit while they are still on the tree and not picked up, but when they become almost ripe, what is called in the fiqh buduwi salah, and that word is came from the hadith also, that bada salahuhu, that when the يعني the ripening becomes visible. The ripening of these fruits become visible. خلاص, it's okay. Now it's a matter of a few days only to pick it up and take them. So you can sell them at that stage, but you cannot sell them at the stage of when they are still very small, or when they are in the blossom period, or after it even. But when they become almost ripe, within a few days they can be picked up, then you can sell them. So there, in the first case, the argument the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, بأي حق تأخذ مال أخيك, by virtue of what right you take the property of your brother. So this is the idea of interest. In fact, that applies on interest, and wherever we talk about all things, and this is the argument that is taken by the three schools of fiqh, and I declare the fourth one is wrong in this regard. Okay, in the arbun, that by what virtue you earn the arbun in arbun sale, that if I come and continue the payment, I'll take the item, but if I don't come, you earn that amount. By what virtue you earn it? You didn't sell anything, so how would you earn it? There's no reason. And the three schools of fiqh took that argument and they said the arbun is not permissible. Definitely, you don't earn by it. This is why the Islamic banks took the concept of hamish al-jiddiyya, not the arbun, and the difference between them is really huge. Huge, not a small difference at all. Hamish al-jiddiyya, we revert to it only to recover any additional cost that is caused by you to us, but not to make any profit. Okay, but before you, Jihoun, you want to say something?
Interesting argument. I heard the the first time actually, that just before, a few days before the harvest, let's say, only can be sold. But what about the Muzara or other the agricultural contracts, which are the seasonal based on the harvest, you know? They have, let's say, twice a year the harvest. So in advance, they come up with these sales contracts. Then what about them? Because they don't have any
In
fruit or any.
Muzara'a and its sisters are partnership on the product of the land or of trees or whatever. يعني مزارعة مرابحة مزارعة مساقة مغارسة. So these are partnership on providing what the agriculture requires of resources. They put them together and they divide the output between them. It's not a sale of part of the output. And this is why, for instance, they say in Murabaha, or not in Murabaha, really in Ijara, when you give your land on lease basis, well, the lessee may take it for agriculture, which is fine. It can be, you can lease agricultural land for agriculture. But then they say you cannot make the lease the rent in the lease as part of its product, because it may not give that product at all. So you cannot make it as part of its product. You have to lease it with an amount of money. You can lease it for an amount of grain also, but it should be a definite amount that is agreed upon. And then that lease, the lessee takes the risk of the project. And that, if you remember, we discussed it in last semester in who deserves the profit, who takes the profit. The one who owns the project doesn't have to own each factor of production. He may own one of them or may not own even any of them. He may start with money, and money is not a factor of production. But then he pays for factors of production, but he owns the idea and the project. And the example, if you remember, is car leasing. Even the assets, the capital is taken on lease basis. So he takes on lease and gives on lease, and everything he uses, he owns it by virtue of owning the capital money and owning the idea, the project of making this kind of business, car leasing. So owning this project, that's what gives him the right or the entitlement to any profit that is generated from it. So that's a different issue. But in Murabaha, it's the same. In Muzara'a, is the same. It's a partnership. So they deserve a percentage of the final return. According to what they agreed, it is distributed between them because they cooperated on creating that return. Now, muzara'a, to say muzara'a means that I give you the fruits before they are ripe? No, definitely not. There's no such a muzara'a that is permissible in Sharia, even if it's practiced in some places.
Yes. For example, this Arboon case, if the buyer does not perform, do you think that it will break the ethical objective of the transaction? If anybody wants that, for example, if I sell my house, I take an advance for 10%, and after 10 days, the buyer say, I don't want your house, sorry. On the other hand, I waited 10 days and I rejected all the other offers. So doesn't it affect the ethical principle of buying and selling?
Not really at all, as a matter of fact. Rather, this weight, you have accepted it by your own desire. Yani you did not, it is part of the agreement. As a matter of fact, okay, last week, a buyer of a piece of land that I own in California backed up, and he sent me an email that, well, I am backing up. And it was, in fact, in the contract from the beginning. And I knew that he has a number of days during which he can, they call it in America, due diligence period. So for due diligence, he has the right to back up. So this is the idea that he has the right to back up within a period of time. And I didn't lose anything, and I accepted that period of time because I liked that kind of sale, and I accepted that condition to give him enough time to rethink it more. And this kind of condition, in fact, even mentioned by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when someone who came to the Prophet saying that, I don't know how to argue prices or goods in the market, and it was simple kind of guy. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, make that condition whenever you make a sale or buy, that you can back up within a few days, a period of time. Tell them that. And he started that man to make that condition. So the idea of potentiality, and Arbun is no more than that. Why do I make the Arbun? Because I know I may back up within the number of days of the Arbun. So and the other guy accepted it. So waiting for that period does not make you lose anything, because you accepted it and you like to wait on that on that period. It's not.
Both parties can withdraw.
Hmm?
Both parties can withdraw from the contract, from the promise.
Not really.
If the buyer has
It
the right
could
to
be.
withdraw, then the seller has the right to withdraw.
But it can be to one party. Can it be given? Can this right be given to one party only?
Do you think it is unethical?
Does that violate any ethical value if that right is given to one party only? Does it violate any ethical value?
Yes.
No, it does not.
Because for example, I have an apartment over here. For example, I sell it for 1 million Turkish lira. I took 10% advance. Then next day I again gave ad in the newspaper that my house is 11 million lira, 1.1 million lira. This means I have taken the advance. At the same time, I'm trying again to sell it at a higher price and manipulating the market. Because when my transaction is fixed, I've got advance for 1 million rilla. Now I'm trying to sell it for 1.1, 1.2 million rilla. If doesn't happen, at least I will get 1 million rilla. So I think this is not the moral of ethics. If you have promised that, okay, you have given me the token, I will not give ad now, and I will not take commitment from other party. Either it is 1.5 million rilla.
So what do you want to say? Do you want to say that it is fair and reasonable to give this option only to one party, not to both parties?
If one party is getting, then other party should be getting.
No. Why? Why the other party should be getting? And if the other party should be getting it, then you fall into this immorality that I can offer it again and again and again. Yeah, I mean, are you criticizing this behavior as immoral, or you accept this behavior as fully moral?
For example, means that if the buyer has a right to withdraw, this means that buyer will start searching for another property which might be at 0.9 million rilla.
Fine.
But on the other hand, the seller will lose the opportunity for these days.
No, will not lose the opportunity because you consensually gave it. No, you consensually gave it. You consensually gave it. You did not lose anything. And you consensually gave this period, and it is permissible to give that.
If there is no such clause, then
if there's no such clause, then the contract is binding from day one.
And if an Argun is given, the buyer will say, okay, give my Argun back. You don't have the right to earn.
What?
If there is no clause of waiting for 10 days, for 5 days, if there is no clause, then if the buyer backs up, he said, okay, I'm not doing this transaction, give my advance payment back. This is unethical to hold my Argun.
Did you notice that you are contradicting yourself? Because if there is no time given, means there is no arbun. Means a contract is done at the moment of the contract and is fait complete. If no time is given, means it is fait complete now. And either that we agreed You pay now 10%, and after 5 days you pay the remainder. Or you agree that all the amount should be done now. It means it is fait complete, it is sale. That it means if there is no time given.
There will be two time periods, Professor. There will be two time periods. One is to withdraw and one is to fulfill your promise. You can fulfill your promise in 30 days and you can withdraw your offer within 10 days. These are two times in a contract. But usually there is no time to withdraw. You have to fulfill your final transaction within 30 days of your advance payment. There's only one time period in a usual business property transaction. That on day one, if you pay 10%, then within 30 days or 40
But
days.
my dear, you are wrong. Real life is not like that. Real life, I gave you the example that happened with me just this week. Okay? In real life, that there is a condition, or there may be a condition, consensual, that you can withdraw, one party can withdraw, not both, within a period of time. They may even agree on two parties can withdraw, both, even that way. They may also agree on that two parties can withdraw and within a period of time. So each one can give the note that I am withdrawing from this. Both of them are permissible and both of them are consensual and both of them are okay. But the Arbon says that the Arbon contract, as it is in the Hanbali school, says that if you withdraw, Mr. Buyer, then you lose the Arbon. This is what is not fair, because I mean, this is really profiteering without selling anything. You are profiteering. And this may cause that reason that I put some hindrances to you, that as a seller, put some hindrances to you so you won't be able to pay me within that time. And then I gain this and I put another advertisement for it to sell it, etc. What is not fair is that you take that amount instead of taking the actual damage or compensation of the actual damage that happened to you. So if taking the compensation of the actual damage is fair, because these 10 days that you made me lose, if you have another opportunity and you knew I have another contract, I canceled it to give it to you, then you compensate me when you back up. But if there was no other offer given to me, what should he compensate if there was no real loss? And in fact, we go beyond that to avoid any such claim of I lost time and I lost opportunities. To remove such claim, we say it in Islamic banking especially, that the right of compensation applies only to the actual out-of-pocket additional cost caused by the failure of the customer to proceed with the transaction. So we say actual out of pocket. That is an additional cost that you had to pay because of that, in order to avoid any abuse of the kind that you mentioned. So it is fair. What is unfair in it? And what is unfair in not accepting, in rejecting the Arbon?
For example, in Pakistan, we used to deal property. Once you paid the advance, you cannot back. Either you have to forfeit that advance, because if this thing is there, it is in the mind of the buyer that I can withdraw and even I will get my money back. This will ruin all the property transaction and all the buying selling transaction. Everybody can withdraw. Oh, give my money back, I withdraw. I got another opportunity. I don't want to get into the business. This will affect the balance of buying and selling, the balance of ethics. Because once you have promised with a clear mind that yes, I will buy this property, then your right to find another property will not be there. And for the seller, you don't have the right to offer your property again to others. So both parties will come into a balance.
And how about if the Arbon is 10% and really there is no loss at all? Is it fair to take that 10%?
Basically, loss is not in monetary terms.
Is it fair to take that amount?
Yes.
That's the question. Where does that fairness come from?
Fairness where comes, for example, as I giving a property changes every Monday. The property right now will not be property next day in this Turkish market, in Istanbul. For example, my property is 1 million, next day it will be 1.1 million. Then if I sell next day, I will get 1.1 billion, but I sacrifice that. I hold and I made my promise that I sold my property for 1 million. After 10 days, it will be 1.15 million. I cannot sell.
But how about on the next day, it is only 95, 905, 9,000. Huh?
But the promise is made.
Yeah, mister, please,
This is the
please,
mindset.
please. Okay, and I assure you on that there's no court in the whole world that can accept this argument. You know why? Because it is profiteering argument. It is completely profiteering, and then as a seller, I will require a higher amount, and I always make issues that makes it hindrances to be not being able to pay back continue that transaction, and then will earn it without anything really, and continue earning this way. This is you see all courts in the world and in the capitalist system. They estimate the damage that is done to you, and they tell you have right to be compensated for that damage, including they consider in that damage the lost profit. But they don't allow you to take, suppose the arbon is 50%, so you lose 50% of that simply because you failed in doing that. Could the arbon, there's no limit to it. Okay, now definitely there's no court in the world, and no rational person would accept that at all. And what you are talking about is not a arbon sale, is a sale, a fait accompli. A fait accompli, you don't lose the arbon in it, you lose a damage that is estimated by court or by arbitrators. It is not that you lose everything and you lose it right away. And if you lose that arbon completely, I think this will be the utmost unfair, rather, not fair. Held to that kind of balance of transactions. No, the reality is that here people are profiteering from the buyers, and it's easy to make all kind of hindrances for that. So you cannot claim that this is acceptable in any way. Suppose if the arbon is high percentage, still acceptable.
There is one more clause. In Pakistan, I'm talking about Pakistan. There is one more clause. If the seller backs, he will pay twice.
He will pay what?
Double the amount.
Double the amount. So if the amount is 1 million and I back up, I have to pay you 2 million
Of the advance.
of the advance. Well, if you do that in Pakistan, then in Pakistan you are kind of oppressors all the way. And you are wrong. And you are wrong. Doesn't mean take that contract and show it to any court in America. They will not accept it.
The court said it is a custom. It is a tradition of the property market. We accept this.
No.
Yeah, court accept traditions. It is not accepted. Both accepted in Islam.
Well, I am sorry to say that. I am sorry to say that. I think if this is the way you guys deal, and this is why your economy is not going to grow all your life. This is why you were in all these troubles all the past 70 years.
It's a normal transaction to base on ethics. You have to perform your promise.
You perform your promise, and you can be charged for the damage that you caused. But you cannot be your money can be just taken out of you simply regardless of the damage that you caused. It is the damage that you caused, yes, you can be charged for it. But beyond the damage, definitely, this is anti-human nature and anti any kind of ethic. all ethics. If you do that in Pakistan, then you guys are wrong. And this is probably one of the reasons that you have to revise it. One of the reasons that your economy is still based on theft rather than on real growth. Yani, you go in any market, and I've been to Pakistan many times. I mean, I've been to markets in Pakistan, in all cities of Pakistan practically. It's like thief, yani, like theft, and the principle there, sell and don't expect the customer to come back again once more. You sell him only one time. You don't grow customers. You sell that time, that item, and khalas goes wherever it goes. This is what is yani the market is based on.
Think out of the box. Yes.
Yeah, you have really to change that kind of behavior. If it is that way, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself said that this is not acceptable.
How this happened in Istanbul? You know?
It doesn't matter how it happens in any place. We are talking how it happens in Islam and in Islamic finance. We are talking how it happens in Islam and in Islamic finance. Okay? Yes.
Maybe just to add to the question of Jayhun, Salam is probably a better example rather than Muzara'a because the counterpart doesn't exist in Salam. So how is Salam justified when the counterpart doesn't exist?
For the harvest before the.
Yeah. I mean, paying before the harvest.
They don't have chaos.
Salam is said on expectation, but of course, any business, when I buy a thing, I buy it usually before I have a customer, right? And I buy things, yani an importer of cars here, import cars before he has the customers, on expectation that these cars that he imports will be sold at a higher prices and he will make profit. So Salam is exactly the same way. This is why they say if you put in Salam a condition that it should be from this farm, then the Salam contract is invalid.
I see.
It can be, you are required, it is a full-fledged commitment. You are required in Salam. It's a fait accompli, a sale, a done deal sale. It's you got the price of it, you have to deliver that quantity. So it's exactly as we say, you got the quantity and you pay the price. So here you got the price and you deliver the quantity. I don't see it different from bay' mu'ajjal, from sale on credit. And Salam is simply sale on credit. And this is why they say you have to define exactly what is the commodity that you are selling, what is the weight and everything, and date of delivery and place of delivery and all these. And if you put any condition that may, under any circumstances, make it impossible to be implemented, that Salam is invalid.
Yes.
And like a condition from your farm, that your farm may not give that grain in that season. So it cannot be.
So how is it different to the hadith you were talking about earlier? That if it's in a blossoming stage, you cannot sell it until it's close to the right
Because here
stage.
you are selling on description, you are describing an item. Whereas in the hadith, these are the trees, and I'm selling you the fruit of these trees before they are ripe. I'm not selling you apple of certain quality, of certain size, and so on, and that is permissible. But I'm selling you the fruits on these trees. Look at them; they started holding. So the small fruit is still very green and is still small. It started not only the blossom or at the time of blossoms. Look at the blossoms, how blossoming is this tree. I sell you these fruits.
Yeah, I think the fruits of a tree that not fall under Salam. They fall under Mughal.
What's that?
I think the fruits of a tree, the standing tree, output of a standing tree doesn't fall under Salam. Cannot sell under Salam.
No, I think you are wrong again. Yani, when you sell fruits of description on description basis, it is Salam. But when you say the fruits of this tree, that is this tree. We are talking about this tree. But I cannot sell you apple of certain quality, of certain, defining the quality completely, and the delivery after 3 months from now. Of course, I can sell you. This is the salam.
But still, there can be restrictions, right? Like before, it was like not from the overseas, not from the the other city or something like.
Well,
certain.
any kind, any description that may at any point of time make it impossible to deliver or to get, then that condition is not permissible in salam. The salam, all of it may be void. The salam contract may, for instance, there are kind of differences. Okay, they used to, in the fiqh book, they talk about the Shami wheat, the Shami wheat from Syria. And the Shami wheat is usually, was known in the area as better kind of wheat. You can sell Shami wheat, yes, but you cannot sell Shami wheat from the village of Duma. You can sell soft wheat, for instance, that comes from Canada. And usually Canada produces soft wheat. So you can sell soft Canadian wheat, because Canada is vast, and even if there is a 10,000 farm in Canada that did not produce, some other farm will still produce it. It's vast enough that the commodity will always be available at the season. So that you can, these kind of conditions, yes, are permissible, but a condition that may create a situation that it may not be available, that's not permissible. So salam, of course, fruits of trees, you can sell fruits, but those fruits of this tree, that is what the Prophet ﷺ said in that hadith. Okay, the difference is so clear and so obvious. It's not related one to the other. Yalla ya Sami, go ahead and continue, please.
Okay. It should be noted that prohibition of riba is never meant to be a prohibition or elimination of materially rewarding financing in general and of debt creating financing in specific.
And by the way, Mateen, I think in these descriptions, in most of the cases, you are wrong in understanding the market, not that the market that will. Okay, just to make it, yeah. Your understanding of that market is the wrong thing, not that the market is that. Yeah. Yeah. Because I've got even past experiences of that kind. Yeah. When, for instance, you told me that Islamic banks in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, they sell currency on salam. Well, definitely, I know they don't. Okay, definitely. And I checked that anyway. I have Dr. Ma'bad al-Jarhi was an advisor to Emirate Islamic Bank. Okay, it's not difficult to check. Your understanding was incorrect. You called it salam, but that was not salam, and definitely they don't sell. They don't literally take it from me, and literally I'm saying it. No Islamic bank today sells currency on future delivery. No Islamic bank today sells currency on future delivery or buys currency or on future currency, sells or buys.
On spot,
Okay.
just
Now
on
I
spot.
know that there are promises that are done, but you should remember and realize that a promise is not a contract, and a promise by all laws breaking a promise may require compensation of the physical damage. Whereas if a contract is signed, the contract must be fulfilled. That's big difference. If I don't deliver to you in a contract, I have to deliver the thing that is sold. Whereas in a promise, I may be charged damage if I couldn't deliver it. But I'm not required to deliver in a promise.
But currency salam is different. Professor, currency salam is different. It's not about selling currency. It's not about selling currency. Currency salam is different. It's financing us.
Well, there's no salam without sale. Salam means sale. Salam means sale.
Correct.
So if you tell me, you told me already, salam, they make salam in currency. Salam doesn't mean other than sale. So they don't do that. And so this is yani, completely an understanding rather than a reality. Yalla, let's,
Just one.
How the concept of ethics connected
just one
with
moment. It's okay, let's see.
Okay.
So in the case of a loan, qard, we are doing currency now for currency future. I mean, we'll get in the future. Does that apply to the loan also? Or is it a different transaction?
No, the loan is permissible. I mean, anybody says that if I give you $100 now and you give me $100 as a loan, give me $100 to 3 months from now, I give
No,
it
but
to you as a loan.
if the loan is paid in a different currency, then it will become a exchange transaction, right?
No, if you put a condition to pay it in a different currency, then it becomes exchange. Then it is haram. But when Abdullah ibn Umar came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and told him, we sell in sometimes in dinar and sometimes in dirham. And at the time of payment, the one who is under debt of dinar may like to pay me in dirham, or the other way around also. So what should I do? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, it is okay, provided you make it in the price, in the exchange rate of the day of payment, and you don't leave any part of it later. In other words, you don't say, okay, you are a debt under debt of $100. I'll pay you now 50 in Turkish lira, and then we will consider the other 50 equals so much the Turkish lira, but I will pay it next week. That's not permissible. You pay now, you can pay 50 now only in Turkish lira of the price of today. Now, what remains is $50, not the amount of lira. Then next week, you pay me in lira or in euro or in other currency at the price of when you pay. That is permissible.
And this is currency salam, Professor. This is currency salam. I can explain if you want. I must explain.
No, I like you not to explain it.
This is currency salam.
No, this is not currency salam. This is a loan. And if you don't believe in loan, and if you want to give the loan a different price, you are absolutely wrong. And this is not salam. And after all, salam is a term that is known in Sharia, and that is well defined. If you remember, and you will remember it because we are going to mention it, they call salam and other contract, these are the al-uqud al-musammat, the nominate contract. The nominate contract means they have their names and the name is indicative of what they are. They are well known. They are called uqud musammat in our fiqh because they are well known by their own names. And the moment you say the name, everybody knows what does that mean. So don't tell me, oh, there is another kind of salam that you know and you created. That's false. No. There is only one kind of salam, which is you pay now and you take delivery of the commodity later, and that does not apply in currency, because in currency, the condition has to be hand to hand.
For example, I have a bill of exchange of $25,000.
Well, that is incorrect. That is wrong. Bill of exchange is a debt, is not cash. And bill of exchange cannot be exchanged for cash anyway. So period. Yani, you want to create things from your own mind, create them, do them whatever you like, but that's not Islamic finance. That's your finance. Let's call it Mateen finance. Okay? Continue, please. Continue, Sami.
Okay,
We
how?
don't want Mateen finance. We want this kind of finance. Alaikum salam. Well, you are very late, but tfaddal, it's okay.
Okay. The three
Very,
channel
very
of
deep.
finance.
Well, our class is here, it's not downstairs. Please. Yalla ya Sami, go ahead.
Okay, okay. The three channels of finance translate into morally loaded axioms. Axiom of earning and axiom of financial assets. Axiom of earning, property assets based, morally screened, value creating. When we talk about the first one, is reflect the fairness, right to gain by owning. And the second one, it's reflect morality, inner screen, social screen, and legal screen. In value creating, it reflect benefiting based transaction based on making increments. When we talk about financial axiom of financial assets are recognized for what they represent: truthful, realism, actuality. Okay. Ethical value of just.
Go back to the previous one.
Okay.
Okay. Financial assets are recognized for what they represent. If it represents a debt, bill of exchange is simply a debt. We don't take it as other than debt. You want to take it as money, it's not money, it is debt. And debt is what it is. Debt can be transferred at face value, regardless of the date of payment or of the due date, but it cannot be discounted. It cannot be taken for any other amount other than the face value, not even in another currency, because it's a debt. You see, not even in another currency, because it's a debt, it's a future debt. And at the future, when it is paid, when it is settled, when it is no more bill of exchange, because it is settled, at that moment it can be settled, of course, at any other currency, because like any other debt. So we treat it as a debt, a bond, debenture, a flow, annuities, flow of equal payment in the future. All these are debts. We treat them, we apply to them the rules of debt. When it is currency, we apply to it the rules of currency. When it is variable assets, we apply the rule of variable asset. One of the applications of this is you cannot sell Salam shares. Why can't you sell Salam shares? Because what is the Salam? What is the share? The share is
Ownership.
now in the Islamic law, not in the Kufrani law. In America, a share is equal to any other share. And but a share today is equal to a share tomorrow also. The same share in the American law. So you can give loan of a share, or you can sell share on Salam. Now, why can't you sell share in Sharia on Salam? Because the share represents the package, this package of assets minus liability, and is now. How can you sell? You deliver what you sold, which is now, you deliver it tomorrow. You cannot deliver that tomorrow. So you cannot deliver that quantum of assets and liability tomorrow. That's why a share cannot be sold on Salam. Can it be sold on credit? ايش رايك يا عباس? This is the meaning of Abbas, frowning, very much frowning. Yeah, but he is not Abbas, he's smiling, you see. He's Hassan, Hassan. Hassan is good anyway, he's Hassan. Yeah, you are not Fahad? You are Shah, you are Shah. Remove the Fahad. I asked you, Abu Muhammad.
Abu Muhammad.
Okay, يلا يا Hassan. Can we sell a share on credit? Jihun, do you agree with him? Can we sell a share on credit?
Regarding the salam, you said that no.
Hmm?
In terms of the salam shares, no.
Well, the question, can we sell a share on credit? Did I say salam? What did I say then? The question is,
Before we were in a sense of short sale.
huh?
Short sale.
I think yes. It's an ownership.
What you are, يعني sometimes you think you know what you are saying, but very often you don't. Sorry. Short sale, we'll come to it just one moment again, because it relates to this. You can sell a share on credit. Sale of a share on credit means giving the share now and the payment will be tomorrow. So it's fine. I am giving you the share now, and presumably now it is known, the company, the price of the share in the market, so and so, and its capital, market capitalization, so and so, its asset and liability. Go to the website, you find its asset and liability, presumably, at least as of now, we know what it is. But I cannot sell you a share on deferred delivery, on salam, because tomorrow it will be different. This is one. Two, what is the short sale? Abdel Nasser, can you define the short sale and let Brother Mateen understand it, especially when you analyze it from Sharia point of view?
If it is related to the debt, I think it's
Share, we are talking about share. Okay, now let's look at the short sale that is called short sale of shares in the market. What is called in the market is as follows: that you make arrangement with the broker, and the broker has already arrangement with some persons who own this share, and they have it under his management. Okay, so he has arrangement with them that he can borrow them or use them, or any way of using, and he compensate them one way or the other, usually on interest basis, but leave the interest side. So short sale, he may thought that it is selling a share that you don't have, which is incorrect. It is a borrowing of a share, and then a selling of a share that you have, that you borrowed, because borrowing transfers ownership, right?
Yes.
So when I borrow a share, I will, I become the owner, I can sell it. So in fact, if it were not for the issue of borrowing, short sale is permissible for shares, because you owned it and then you sell it, which is fine, beautiful. And you sell it either cash or may sell it on deferred payment, that's fine. But short sale, usually you sell it for cash. Most sale in the market, when it is normal sale, it is a sale for cash. Even when you take margin from the broker or from your banker, it is margin, but the payment to the other party is done for cash. So sale, usually in shares, you sell for cash. So if it were not for the issue of borrowing, then short sale is permissible for shares. There's no problem in it, because you are delivering the share now and get the price mostly now, and even if it is deferred is okay. The problem is in the borrowing. When you borrow a share, what are you going to return to the lender? You are going to return that share, but that share, you are returning something different than what you borrowed, because you didn't borrow the entry that in the computer that is called share of IBM. You borrowed that quantum at that moment, and the quantum tomorrow will be different. So you, because of the existence of borrowing in the short sale is haram, not because you are selling what you don't own. And this is, sorry to say it again, you want me to tell you who said it before me? No one. Okay, it's me. And I mean, I said it in more than one place anyway, in my papers. And Awofi is wrong in this regard, because Awofi said because you are selling what you don't own. In short sale, as practiced in the market today, you don't sell what you don't own. There is a form, they call it naked short. Have you heard of it? Anybody heard of that? Naked short. To my knowledge, they practice it only in the Kuala Lumpur or whatever this other city, the Labuan market. They call it naked short. Short. Naked short doesn't have a loan. There's no borrowing. It's just naked short. You are selling what you do not own. And you don't own a share, but you sell it. And of course, when you sell it and you don't own it, you make the delivery in the future. This is selling, meaning delivery in the future. So naked short means that you take the money now and you are going to deliver the share in the future. Is that permissible? No, because that's salam. That's the same as salam.
So Professor, if I understand you correctly, you're saying the shares represent the net assets, right?
Yes.
Assets minus liabilities.
Yes.
So if there is certainty.
Quantum, not their value in the balance sheet or in the market. It represents the quantum. The quantities of assets minus the quantities of everything.
Okay.
Not the value.
The value, okay.
And not a percentage of that net worth of that company, of course. So it includes all that, the reality of it. This is where we talk about Islamic finance is a real finance. We deal with reality. And this is the financial reflection of the fiqh. This is why, Fahad, I don't accept much of fiqh in our papers, because we deal with finance, not with fiqh. Fiqh, you have another class that talks about fiqh. Make the fiqh content of the paper, make it there, but don't make it here, because here we want to understand the finance of it. And the fiqh, yes, they say without knowing what does it mean, really. All those who said it. And this is why they made the mistake in the short, in Awofi, when it says short is haram, because you are selling what you don't own and what you don't have. That is incorrect. Short is haram because it has a component of borrowing, and the borrowing is not permissible in shares, because you have to, because borrowing applies only on the mithliyat, on the fungible items, not on the non-mithliyat. And the share is non-mithliyat. Unlike the American laws, where they consider the share mithliyat, because the share is for them is the piece of paper that, or the record in the computer that represents 1/2 million of this company. For us is not. For us is the reality of it. So again, in Awofi said that lending shares is not permissible. Salam in share is not permissible. And when it comes to short sale, they said short sale is not permissible because it is sale of what you don't own. Well, that's not. It is not permissible because of the component of borrowing that is in it. Now, naked sale, naked short, which is, to my knowledge, I may be wrong also. I really appreciate if you can prove me wrong on this. Please check it and show us the exact thing, whether they have naked short for shares in Labuan or in Kuala Lumpur or in anywhere in the Far East. If they have it, then it applies to them. What is naked share is exactly salam. You take the money now and you deliver the share later, and that's of course not permissible by the text of AWOFI. AWOFI said it's not permissible, and rightly is not permissible because you cannot deliver what you sold. What you are going to deliver is something different because what you sold is now at the time of sale.
But I'm not still clear with the quantum, how is it fungible, the quantum of, let's say, for the shares? I mean,
That goes from the first box down there, Axiom financial asset, the first box. What does a financial asset is? What is what does it represent, or what it is? A financial asset is nothing. We throw it away. We don't look at it. It's simply in another paper I wrote more than once that it is simply a veil. Now you need to look at what is behind that veil. What is behind that financial asset? What is a share? A share is a partial ownership of, or represent partial ownership of a company. What is a company? It's assets minus its liability and add the adjustment of the market capitalization also. So all these together, some of them are quantities, some of them are cash, some of them are debts on others, some of them are liabilities to others. Of course, except for the equity, because we are talking about the equity. The share is the equity. So the equity of that company represents all these, and these things, these items, quantitatively and value-wise are variable. They are not fixed across time. They vary every moment. So if you take it as a loan, you cannot pay back what you got. You have to pay back something else that is different than what you gave. And this is why, because we look only at what does it represent. Okay. Now, if a document represents a debt and he wants to call it different names, that's fine. The market calls it different names. For us, it's a debt. And if it is a debt, we can only apply one transaction on it, which is transfer, hawala. And hawala means, regardless of the due date, is same amount. And period, that's it. Yes, that's it. And cannot be any other than that.
Professor, how about the index? In the previous slide, there was a discussion about index. What does it represent?
Okay, it's a good question, really. That's fine, but I want you to answer it, Ya Hassan. What is an index?
Index is representing.
You know, Dow Jones Index, for instance.
Representing like 100 companies, or
does it represent? What is the index? Yeah.
Information and market information. Yes.
It gives me information about prices and quantities traded, or prices weighted by quantities, or any way, whatever the way we calculate it. There are different ways of calculating indices. So the index is that mathematical information that we acquire. Is it something that produces anything?
No.
So it cannot.
Just measure.
It's simply nothing. You may buy it as a piece of information. So subscribe it, and every 5 minutes they tell you what is the index now. That's fine. That's information. You acquire information, but you don't buy units of index as it is being traded in the market today. Units of index. Unfortunately, they trade index even here in Istanbul. And definitely that is wrong. I mean, why should you trade index? There was a time when indexes were not traded in New York. And in trading index in New York is recent. When I was in the New York market in the years 1981 to 83, there was no index trading at that time. Okay. And I worked for 3 years almost in the market here. So I kind of know it at that time, at least, not what it is today. Okay, so there was no index there. So index is what? Is nothing. Now, can you compare? How about you, Yafa? Compare index with an index fund. What is an index fund compared with an index? There are several indexed funds.
Pool of shares, then drawing a new price for the shares. Like mutual fund, they have index fund.
Yeah, what is the indexed fund?
Means you pool the different shares of different segments and draw your own pricing.
Well, that is any mutual fund for shares is that. You didn't define the indexed fund. Here you are defining any mutual, any shares-based mutual fund. I have here, Kuwait Bank has mutual funds and they buy shares.
Index based on a particular basket of funds.
Well, now you come closer, but still not clear. Okay, the funds in that, the shares in that fund are maintained at the same proportion they are in the index. That is an index fund. Indexed fund. We go in that fund, we buy, we hold shares actually of companies XYZ. In the same proportion they are in the fund. In other words, we expect the indexed fund to behave like the index, because we are putting them in the same proportion as they are there. So theoretically they behave, but usually they try to outsmart. The managers of indexed fund try to outsmart their index, the index that they consider. And then they tell you, look, oh, we outsmarted it. Here is our curve is a little bit better than that, but better than that.
They call it alpha. When they beat the index, they say we have created an alpha.
Yeah.
More than the... So
it's sometimes it's only trying to be smart. And this is so common, especially among those people in the finance market. Gosh, for God's sake, everybody think of himself as so smart that is sometimes unbelievable. Okay, خلاص يا سامي, go on. Now, do you want to take a break or?
Thank you.
Okay, let's take a break, 10 minutes.
Okay.
So anyway, these, whether we continue it or not, this session is only done for this, and we have a paper now by whom? Yeah. We have a paper. We want to leave 15 minutes for the paper.
I want to understand, do not. Number 13 in implication of transactions over the base of trade market.
On the base of real.
Real.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Real market.
Sorry, real market.
I'll share it today. I'll share this today.
Oh, yeah. It's pure gamble. Suppose I am a buyer, suppose you are 400 shares, 150. So if it goes 151, I pay $1. So I buy it, I bought it here. Suppose, and I sold it. So I give you, if it goes to 148, you give me $2.
We're saying like we cannot sell a credit, basically. We cannot sell the share on credit. We can,
You can,
but not on salam.
but not on salary. You cannot sell a share on future. Because you cannot deliver what you cannot deliver what you sold.
Yes.
What you sold is different than what you deliver.
Yes.
I haven't signed the previous one, even the online classes. Do
I
we
mean,
need to
those
sign them
that
as
you
well?
attended it, signed them, even
I
online.
attended.
Those that you attended online, you may sign them.
The previous two, I do remember, but before.
Yeah.
Last week. That's before. The first two, I'm not sure. Because one, I attended only one class, the second I didn't reach. I'm not sure which one was that. Anyways, let's not risk be on the same side.
Okay, that didn't come today.
Professor, this one I was not registered in the class.
But you didn't give me that pen, please. You did not attend them.
They did. I was not registered in the class.
Okay, then you are absent. Yes, of course. And here Ala is today absent, but he was with us. We'll leave the other for him to sign. And here, Abdul Nasir again was not with us there.
Professor, I have extracted the data from 2001, 2011 to 2021 for my sector-wise and segment-wise. The volume, how much the total, how much of the total financing is put in the corporate sector, in SME sector, and in agriculture sector. So there is one segment and one sector. Now I'm trying to do some econometric analysis. So the independent, the dependent will be financing, total amount of financing, and the independent will be chemical, oil, sugar. These industries are independent. To see how the variation, how the coefficient will affect the financing. Is it logical?
I didn't get it really. Say it again. I didn't get it.
Yeah.
No.
For example, Y is equal to alpha naught plus alpha 1. This is corporate financing plus alpha 2 SME, then so on.
Okay.
This is financing, total financing done by Islamic banks. Windows and conventional. Windows and full-fledged Islamic banks.
Say, and you want to see the effect on these?
If this is, for example, 1.2, alpha is 1.2, this means that when the financing will increase, when the corporate financing will increase by 1%, the financing will increase by 1.7%.
I understand that.
So
This here, why should this be an independent variable if this is part of this?
Because
This is part of
yes,
this,
this
isn't
is
it?
part of this. Yes.
Well, cannot be.
Okay.
Cannot be. I mean, you cannot say 10 plus 20 plus 30. These are equal 60. That 60 is dependent on 10 and on 20 and on 30.
Then I done profitability. I've taken profitability of the Islamic banks. Profitability will be Y, dependent on the same things.
Profitability here can be taken in, as and take these as quantity of financing to each one of these.
Each one of them.
That reasonable.
Yes.
But is it correct? Now let's ask the question, the logical question. Is it correct? And here you should add government also. By the way, it may be also government.
It is coming under others. Fine.
Or others, yeah.
And then we have epsilon error term.
Yeah. So you take here profitability and you take here quantity of finance to each one of these.
Yes.
Yes, it's reasonable.
Yeah.
It looks to me too simplistic. Doesn't, what is the idea that you want to derive?
I want to drive that from segments, from corporate SME, how much corporate is sharing towards the profit, how much SME is sharing towards the profit, how much agriculture is sharing towards the profit.
But
this coefficient will tell.
The subject of your paper is SMEs.
No, it's the behavior of Islamics towards segment and sectorial financing. We have 5 segments: corporate, SME, agriculture, consumer, and these. So all these must have effect on profitability.
Of course.
So that's I want to this coefficient will tell the magnitude of effect.
That's correct. Yes. I say that This way, yes, it is okay.
Then what will be the
But-
hypothesis? Should I come to on Monday? We can discuss.
It's fine. You want to come, that's fine.
Then what will be
But
the
here-
hypothesis? Profit versus segment, profit versus sectors. Sector, we have 12 sectors. Chemical, agriculture, sugar, cement, electricity, transmission.
Yeah, take profitability to sectors and to
Yeah.
segment.
Yeah.
Both ways.
Two equations. There will be two
Yeah,
equations.
two equations here. Uh, Looks to me is okay. I'm trying to take beyond that. What do you want to derive? What do you want to reach out of that? What is the outcome?
The outcome is that profitability is how much affected by segment
And by sector.
by sector. That's-
And the recommendation that if you want to increase.
The reason is this,
profitability, then
I've done one more research, it's on publishable, it's about SMEs, Islamic toward behavior toward SMEs. So here I want to say that, we say that corporate is a big entity, we give to corporate is less, but SMEs and agricultures are neglected by the Islamic banks also, from the parent which I've seen there. Then they should come to finance agriculture and SMEs also.
If it's more, if it's less profitable, why should they?
But
Yes, we give them incentives.
First, because everybody talks about SME.
So what?
But actually no one finances SMEs.
I know, but talk as much as you want. When
Yeah.
it comes to money, I want to make profit. If you don't give me profit, I don't finance you. So unless you make through regulations or through some other approaches, some incentives, I will not.
So, okay.
That's the objective of incentives. You want me to finance agriculture, make agriculture more attractive to me.
And I've done time series data.
Yeah, again, I think I mentioned that in my comment. 10 years is too short to give you any.
Data is not available. 2000 and beyond 2011, the data is very scattered. Then 2011, it is in a single format.
But the banks have their own reports. Their reports are there. And how many banks you have? It's not a huge amount of banks. You have only 4 banks.
You mentioned.
When was the first bank? Mizan was the first bank, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it was. You mentioned 2011 till 2021. You mentioned me. I was starting from 2015. You should know, go to 2011. It's 10 years.
10 years doesn't give big. When you talk about time series, definitely you need long. So don't mention time series. If you want to leave it only for these 10 years, don't mention issues of time series. That's okay, and you can make reasonable conclusions out of that. Go ahead with these two equations, sector-wise and segment-wise. If the corporate segment can be divided into two parts, if it can be, depend on the availability of data, that big companies or other companies.
No, I was trying that, but it's got no data. It's only corporate, SME, agriculture, consumer, or personal.
Now in SME, they don't take medium and
they take medium, small and medium enterprises.
so small and medium, because usually medium, small, and micro.
We have sale, the turnover is above 700 million rupees. It is corporate.
That's fine. Go ahead. And that's good. Here.
Can we do some another regression test if you want?
On what you see, my last contact with econometry, and I was very good student. I was the top student in econometry, but my last touch to it was in 1973, 49 years ago. So we need to consult. Qais was here, but he left. So we cannot consult Qais, and Adam also is not here. So the only one who is left to us who is closer to that, definitely closer than me, is Ghaith. We will consult Ghaith of that. And I will send your paper to have his evaluation and then.
But first of all, we have to,
As an idea.
yes, we have to run test.
Yeah.
Then what test should be run?
You don't know. Check with anyone. Check with this. Go and visit this.
For your but because I want it to be published later on. For now, I draw simple descriptive analysis with these two equations to make it right now for simple, because it's not possible to complete all the regression analysis within 1 month.
You can make it a regression for the 10 years, 11, 12 years.
Yes, regression analysis, regression for 10 years.
Yeah.
Simple.
And for that period.
And over. And overtake.
Like you need really to check with one who knows a little bit more econometric than I do. I cannot claim that.
That professor is in this department?
Yes, Ray. Check with Ray. Ray from, do you know the room of Qadir Shashi?
Yes,
the other side.
Yes.
He's with him in the same room. So,
his name is?
Dr. Ghaith.
Ghaith.
Ghaith. Ghaith.
Okay.
You know, Ghaith means.
Should I go directly to him, or you will?
Well, I mean, it's okay, and I can mention that to him, but if you go directly, tell him that I sent you to him. I asked you to go to him.
Okay, thank you.
Now we don't have any other really. We need an econometrician.
Yes.
Usually I ask Adam. Adam left us beginning of last semester, and I doubt that he will come back now soon. And also Qais came from the beginning of this year, but now he left also, he's leaving.
I know I've done advanced econometrics in my master's.
Yeah,
But it's better to have someone.
Last touch with it was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
This is not an open class for anybody. Huh? No? Okay.
साफ सुथरा करके पीडीएफ बना के भेजता हूं उसका ना ये दो चैप्टर और सामने हफ्ता ला बेटा
Brother Sami, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you?
Fine, fine. How are you?
Hello.
Hello, yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yeah.
How is everything? I hope you are fine.
Fine, fine. Alhamdulillah, fine.
Thank you. Take care, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
And Ramadan Kareem in advance.
رمضان كريم علينا وعليكم.
Yes. Where people are there and going to the other just drops like yeah, except also which was they get me personal with all of that, those minors. But first of all, there are the weekend promote readable बन जाएगा वो so how it changed copy paste कर सकते हैं beneficiaries so ये जो main publication है हमारे पेपर में चार पांच chapters and this is from the state paper pass so they said that it changed the how to say yeah, the process changed to something that was becoming beneficial as well. लेवल पे आने के बाद जब असिस्टेंट वगैरह होते हैं रिसर्च असिस्टेंट उस पर काम करते हैं आप वैसे लेवल पे स्टूडेंट के बाद उसका नाम छाप दो साथ में छापा मारते हैं लिखो spelling mistakes हमने ऐसे You charge वो ये रखा हुआ है इसमें मोटा कोई रख नहीं वो बच्चों ने लिखी है तो ये भी पहले देखना है for kind of
Oh, yeah.
Shop maybe next week.
Yeah, maybe within a few days should be.
We checked last week, but I was not available.
Are you also planning to have a Kindle version of this one? Kindle?
No, not this one, but it will be online available, but by the library here. They have arrangement to put it online. Online, يعني I don't know whether for sale or only online for reading, but they have arrangement to make it that way. Where did you get this? من دخان.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Record.
Yalla, please sit down, everybody. Anyone who wants water? Take water. If you, anyone who wants water, take water. طيب, continue يا سامي.
Okay.
يلا
Okay.
بسم الله.
Bismillah. Ethical value of justice. No earning without really created added value. Earning by owning. Loss by capital distribution. Don't sell what you don't own or what doesn't exist. Risk is not an object of sale.
You see, there are people who like to go at the corners. Well, for every law and for every kind of practices all over the world, there are border lines, there are border points. And border points, any system cannot be judged by its border points. Border points are not representative. And this is why some of the ulama historically tried to say, salam is an exception of sale. Salam is really not exception of sale. Salam is an expression, in my opinion, of realism, that real life requires, real life doesn't work, that you only sell things that are in your hand. Yes, in principle, you sell things that are in your hand, but in real life, there is a requirement in real life, a real practice, that you sell things that do not exist yet before they exist. So it is not really an exception of the rule. And here, when we look at the details, we will notice that if I sell you this paper, then it has to be in my hand. If I sell you the minaret of the mosque, I have to own that minaret. I cannot sell it to you. That's a thing that is specific thing in itself. But if I sell you on description, I have to deliver what I sell only. And there is description. That description applies to things that don't exist and don't exist even in my possession. So when the Prophet ﷺ, he did not, when he told the Hakim ibn Hizam or others, because there are 2 or 3 probably incidences that happened at the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that he told him, don't sell what you don't own. This is an example. Someone comes to me and asks me to buy him, and he will, he want to buy from me potato that is in that shop, but I don't like to go to that shop for some personal things between me and the owner of that shop, for instance. So I go to Ismail and tell him, buy me this potato. See look at it. This potato that is in that box there, buy me that potato and I'll buy it. I buy it from you. So here where the Prophet ﷺ told him, don't sell what you don't own. You own it first if you want, and then sell it, but you cannot sell what you don't own. So that applies to that specific. But sale on description is a major other kind of practice that is not an exception of sale of what you don't, of prohibition of sale of what you don't own, like many fuqaha thought of that. Rather, that is an expression of realism of Sharia, that there are transactions that by their nature need to be on description. So you are dealing with farming products that will be produced, and everybody needs them, and they are there all the time. In their season. So that is what you buy. And this is where the fuqaha came and made great job really by making that distinction, that what kind of conditions are required to distinguish them from the sale of what you don't own. It's not an exception to it, rather it's a different area of transaction that is needed. On that basis, I also consider what I called عقد التوريد, that sale or transactions on description are rather necessary as part of real life. And whoever claims that, oh, these are haram and the Sharia came with their tahrim, which is the clear cut, what they call it, بيع الكالئ بالكالئ, deferred for deferred. نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن بيع الكالئ بالكالئ. Some ulama understood that al-kali means deferred for deferred. Some ulama understood that as it is not permissible to defer the both items. That is, for instance, I buy from you 10 bushels of fertilizers, delivery 3 weeks from now, and payment on delivery. Both are deferred, or payment after delivery. You give me credit for some time. So I argue that this kind of sale is permissible rather, because this is part of real life. Anything that part of al-fitra, aren't we told that our religion is the religion of al-fitra? And Hassan, don't tell me, is there anybody who said that before you? Nobody said it also. But they are wrong. Okay, period. Yani, without any hesitation. That is it not part of al-fitra, for instance, that when the university wanted to teach Islamic economics and Islamic finance by a person like me, that the university would contact me and hire me maybe 2 months, 3 months, 4 months before the beginning of the semester, and will tell me that you start the semester in September, for instance, you start working with us in September, and we will pay you regularly then. And the contract was in July. Isn't that what we do? If you do any business, don't you need labor to be ready to start with you that business? And you contract them several weeks or months or years maybe in advance. In any business, agriculture, industry, and trade, in all these, don't you need raw materials to be available ahead of time and contracted on that they will come on such and such date, and if they come late, especially in agriculture, then they become useless, and if they become early, you don't have place to store them in. So you need them only on that day to be, so you make the contract, not promise, because promise may not bring you the goods. Promise maybe may lack fulfillment, whereas a contract requires fulfillment, and by force you are required to make delivery in a contract. So contracting in advance is different from kali bikali. Some ulama, in my opinion, awfully wrongly, to a high degree, they are very wrong. They interpreted deferred for deferred as starting a contract, like the ijara contract. You will start after 3 months, and we will pay you also after you start, at the beginning or at the end of each month. We need fertilizers on such and such date, and payment will be on the day of delivery. Need not to be in advance. The mashayikh, those who say that, tell you make it salam. I don't have money to make it salam, and I'm not required to run my business on piles of money in advance. That's not real life is. So I need it on that time, and on that time I will have money, and I pay it there on that time, not seller. So the idea here, what I call the عقد التوريد, that is عقد creating a future delivery contract, I mean a contract creating future delivery of an item or a service with a future payment also. This is what they call in fiqh إنشاء الدين بالدين, creating a debt for debt. In my opinion, that the hadith, the hadith is acceptable in application. This hadith, نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن بيع الكالئ بالكالئ. Its level from acceptance is acceptable, and it is well taken by all scholars. Yet it's not يعني, in a Bukhari or Muslim, or is not graded as Sahih, but it is well taken and well accepted. The hadith, in my opinion, which is again not said by anybody before me to the best of my knowledge, means do not make trade of an already existing future debt for another already existing future debt. يعني, I have a debt on Hassan, and Mateen has a debt on Ismail. So we make these two debts. Mateen comes to Hassan to trade this debt for that debt. These are already existing debts. My debt, for instance, is due after 3 months, and his debt is due after 7 months. Exchange one for the other. That kind of exchange cannot be done without interest. The only way to take an equation, a reasonable, a fair equation between them, is to take their present value and equate them at present value. So without that, that doesn't work. And that is what the Prophet prohibited, because that is interest-based. This transaction is interest-based, is on the border of the interest-based. Whereas if I sell 10 bushels of fertilizers delivered in October, and payable also in October, and we make the sale now, that is not كالئ بكالئ. Even when you take the word for what it is, the word means deferred and means existing, already deferred. Not I created for the future, now created to be deferred. Now, يعني, one of the ulama that who is taken in some places like يعني either a little bit above God or a little bit below God, يعني, but very close to God, above everything else, definitely. In many places taken, he's taken, or by many people, by all what they call themselves Salafi or Wahhabi or all these. Ibn Taymiyyah, the great Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykhul Islam. Okay, Ibn Taymiyyah died in prison, by the way, yani, and imprisoned for his ideas. Wrongly, though. Yani, those who imprisoned him for his ideas were wrong. But anyway, he died in prison. And by yani, another also statement, Ahmad, he was not Kurdish, okay? Probably, Allah, he was Kurdish, maybe, because he came from your area, actually. From Harran, he used to live in Harran, but he came as a baby to Damascus, so he's Damascusan. And for some reason, his tomb is now inside the premises of the University of Damascus. Inside the premises. It so happened when he was, when he died in prison, he wasn't killed. But when he died in prison, they kind of buried him in the somewhere away from all the cemeteries, because they accused him of kufr even, that they did not bury him in a Muslim cemetery. So they buried him somewhere away from the city even, but it so happened it is now inside the premises of the University of Damascus. He was really a great scholar, but he's wrong on this point, that al-kali bil-kali, deferred for deferred, means making a contract in which both items are deferred. Making a contract in which both items are deferred, this is part of al-fitra that is necessary for every kind of business, in agriculture, in industry, and in trade. Even for services, you cannot make a university without contracting people in advance, ahead of time, before you start. Otherwise, you really cannot start. The same thing, you contract students also before they start. So all these, the creating a deferred in a contract, in my opinion, is permissible, and definitely it is haram, and it will be, if you analyze it, you will notice that it is an interest-based. When you transact an already deferred debt for another, an already existing deferred debt, then that is haram. This is the kali for kali. And this is what the words themselves mean. The word kali means deferred, it doesn't mean creating a deferred. And it means, the first thing that should come to the mind, an already existing deferred for an already existing deferred. Okay?
Just reading now, it says, حيلي, says, بيع الدين نسيئه ما يعرف بالبيع الكالئ. الدين بالدين, وهذا بيع ممنوع شرعا. حيلي also agrees with you, I guess.
Did he say إنشاء الدين بالدين? This is what you need to see. If he didn't say إنشاء الدين بالدين, so Zuhaili is okay then. But if he says إنشاء الدين بالدين, he is in trouble.
It says بيع الدين بالدين.
Yeah. So بيع الدين بالدين definitely is but if you go a little bit more in detail with Zuhaili, you will notice that he says again that this contract is not permissible. He'll tell you that there are only three ways of sale. Either you defer the delivery and make payment now, or make delivery now and the payment, delivery now and payment later, or make it hand to hand. Both are now. And the fourth one, you would say, make deferred for deferred. That is not permissible in Sharia. And you go to the sale, kind of sale, he will tell you three are permissible and the fourth one is not permissible. And even Zuhaili does not, he did not say that before me. Okay.
And what is the?
Not even after me. But Zuhaili died, rahimahullah, just a few years ago, maybe in 1916, 17. 2015. Because we were together in Algeria in 2013 in the OIC Fiqh Academy. When we met it wasn't in Algiers itself, it was in Wahran, the city of Wahran. He was there. So he died in 2015, rahimahullah. And he was a nice person. طيب, Monsieur, you have 10 minutes to wrap up, or 5.
Okay. Okay, Islamic finance and social justice, commercial Islamic finance institution, socially responsible like other units. Responsibility varies in proportion of ability. Caring for the unfortunate segments like zakah, awqaf, and sadaqah. Ethical value of realism. Realism in Islamic finance is a basic ethical value. One may earn a return only if there is a real value added created, and one may not earn a return with no certain of real wealth increment.
They are in social finance. Islamic social finance.
Yes.
I think it is important to distinguish between social justice and economic justice. And if you don't distinguish between them, you really are denying that Islam imposes zakah for redistribution. Yani, why zakah is needed if social justice is already done in the economic, in the market? If social justice is done in the market and in the finance, why do you need zakah then? You don't need it really, because social justice is done there already, so you really don't need any adjustment. So why do we need adjustment? Simply because the economic justice alone does not fulfill all the requirements of human beings. We do require social justice in addition to economic justice. And don't ask يعني, don't ask the economists to make the social justice for you. The economic transaction, exactly. Say them, all those people who talk about haddul kifaya, and you have many, a lot of poetry in all Islamic writing, Islamic economics, unfortunately. Yani I would say every Egyptian who wrote on Islamic economics made that problem and that mistake and that mix up. I am as an employer, if your production to me in the market doesn't give me more than $10, why should I give you 15? Why? By what virtue I give you 15 and you can only produce $10 for me? You cannot produce more than $10. Why should I give you 15? I did not exploit you. I don't have more power than you. I don't have anything. Yeah, we are equal in the market. So the price of your work is $10. Why should I be forced to give you 15? Why do we accept minimum wage in Islamic economics? We accept it on the assumption, which is a very strong assumption, in fact, and very realistic assumption, that usually in the market, laborers are the weaker party in their negotiation power. Employers usually have more strength in negotiation, so we put a minimum wage, and the minimum wage should be fair, reasonably fair أيضا. يعني also if we make it not reasonably fair, we would be making injustice definitely to employer. And I'll give you an example. Almost every employer now is escaping from the state of California in America. Almost everyone. Almost the construction of new homes is stopping now in California because labor force, labor costs have become very exorbitantly high, that you cannot really afford it. You cannot make work. You cannot sell the hamburger that you are selling for $5. You used to sell it for $3, for $5. You can probably sell it for $7, but you cannot sell it for 15. Nobody will buy it. You have to close your shop because the labor force, the labor ingredient in it have become $7 or $8 alone without other ingredients. So you cannot really sell it anymore. So you close and go to other states. And this is what almost everybody is doing now in California because of that. Now, the economic justice is to give you exactly the price that is worth of what of your contribution. Beyond that, if your family is big, if that is not enough for you because you are unskilled, then there is definitely the zakat, there is the social justice that requires not leaving any person, any stomach empty. Any person to be hungry, that is definitely haram. والله لا يؤمن من بات شبعان وجاره جائع إلى جنبه وهو يعلم. يعني you are not even a believer if you go to bed full with your full stomach and your neighbor is hungry. So you are not even a Muslim. So the social justice definitely comes as an adjustment, but don't talk when you speak economics, talk about economic justice. economic justice does not fulfill all the social necessities, all the social requirements, that is correct. All the human needs, that is correct. And we agree on that. So we need adjustment of this economic justice through zakah. And zakah is not based really on it's based on the principle that we must not leave any empty stomach. We must not leave any person hungry. So this is on a humanitarian basis. This is why I call it al-rahma wal-ra'fa. Al-rahma wal-ra'fa. It cannot be without, a human being without rahma and ra'fa definitely is a deprived human being, is a half a human being, incomplete human being. And this is where we need to perform social justice, we need this adjustment. Otherwise, if the market will do it all, you don't need zakah really at all. You can eliminate zakah if the market is going to do all the job. And we believe that the market does not do it. This is a fundamental difference between Islam and capitalism. Fundamental. In fact, exactly, and I believe in that strongly, whether somebody said it before me or not, that doesn't matter, that I believe strongly in it, that the the market does not fulfill all these objectives and need to be adjusted. So that verse 47 of Surah Yasin, Surah number 33, that verse, in my opinion, represents exactly the capitalist mentality. Why should we feed those whom God could have fed if he so wishes? Well, of course, God could have fed them if he so wishes. There is no reason why not. Definitely, God could have done that. But he wanted it to be done through us. He wanted it to be done through through completing our humanity, our human self. And to complete it, we need to have this ra'fa and rahma and consideration of other persons around us, not only of ourselves. The capitalist mentality is not like that. That, oh, we don't need to feed those. God could have fed them. Why? So why should we? Why are we required? You know who expressed this mentality very clearly? King Fahd at one time said, "Am I the guardian of God for his creatures? Why should I feed? Why should I feed those whom God could have fed?" This is exactly the meaning of that statement. And King Fahd said that. So King Fahd is of that kind, really of that. And many people, unfortunately, on the other side, mix the capitalist mentality with the Islamic mentality. We need really to distinguish them also. While we see that many people say the market is enough and the market will do it. No, the market doesn't do it. Definitely the market requires adjustment, and that is exactly the meaning of the presence of zakah. It's okay, Sam. Now we need to listen to Jehun because his paper is also important. So Jehun, we don't want you to read it, definitely. So give us the idea of that paper. So summary of the summary. Shukran, ya Sami. Be with us.
Basically, the paper comes the economic theory for Islamic finance regulation. Author is the Mabid Ali Al-Jahbi, the professional in Saif Volume 2.
He was in Saif. He is now in the University of Social Sciences in Ankara. So he's your neighbor. Contact him there. He's a very knowledgeable person. He's a good Islamic economist and Islamic economics writer. That doesn't mean we don't criticize him. We criticize everybody. Okay, go ahead.
So just for the definition of the economic theory of the bank regulation, what it says that it can be considered as part of the whole theory of regulation. And over here, he justifies it by the market failure and the a positive approach, where the regulation is the result of the interaction between the certain elements, such as the government bodies, the banking and financial bodies, even the political process. He also involves in this process. So institutions and etc. Over here, he closely analyzes the market imperfections and the regulations, and he says that incentives to monitor the asset safety, the market failure, and the the regulations, the related issues of the monetary policy, and the aggregate liquidity. Just to come to the main
So,
point.
in other words,
Yes.
really, why do we need to regulate banks? Is there a need for regulating banks? Yes, there is a need. And at least regulations came from historical experience. Until around the mid of the past century, 20th century, there were almost no regulations in many countries. But they noticed that we can't really do without them. The first one that started regulation was in UK with the establishment of the Central Bank of England. It was established, I think, in 1944 or around that time. So before that, really, and we knew historically that banks made a lot of mess in the market. So and this is why the common statement came that banks give you the umbrella when it is sunny and shiny, and they take the umbrella when it is raining, when you really need it. And that is exactly what they do. So they really need then regulation and started regulation. Do we need that for Islamic banks too? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so over here, what he mentioned actually, he says that Islamic banks find it beneficial to so-called mimic the conventional banks because it's basically cheaper and easier to do so. What he said is that Islamic finance requires complicated and costly procedures compared to the conventional finance. Yet, it has significant macroeconomic benefits which cannot be internalized by individual banks. Therefore, Islamic banks tend to mimic conventional finance in order to cut costs and maximize short-term profits. And he says regulation can modify bankers' incentives in order to capture the benefits of Islamic finance. So basically, he says, while there's the way of the conventional bank, what for they need to go more complicated issues, if they can just simply mimic the certain elements from there and make their life easier. He said that the economic theory of bank regulation attempts to explain how these banks are basically regulated, and over here he comes up with the details. I won't go into this. He mentions actually 16 Islamic finance contracts, which are actually analyzed in details in terms of this regulation. What he says that the conventional finance, he says, is based on the classical loan contract. But okay, and he adds that banking industry gravitates toward the large scale banks, not the small individual banks. So it is stated that the controversy whether regulation should focus on protecting such banks, the large scale banks, from failure or operating finance users from insolvency or bankruptcy. So basically say that usually these regulators or the regulation bodies.
Wait, let's look at the issue because that relates to the growth and development of Islamic banking. First, practical experience of Islamic banking came in Mid Ghamar, in addition to Hajj Tabuk, Hajj in Malaysia, but here in Mid Ghamar, the experiment was with the small people by its definition. Ahmed al-Najjar, rahimahullah, was a poor guy. He wasn't from a rich family at all. And he was from the regular farming family. So then he made that experiment in Mid Ghamar, collecting savings in small amounts and giving it to local businesses to make some profit. So naturally, it was really helping the poor. So this idea of helping the poor remained in the background of Islamic banking and the whole idea that Muslims, Islamic banking should help the poor all the time. But later on, when Islamic banking was adopted by the oil money. And we started having big banks. And big banks cannot survive on these small guys. And anyway, in their countries, these small guys even don't exist. يعني those small farmers or small handymen or handyman crafts and handicrafts and all these small things don't exist in Kuwait or in Qatar or in almost in Saudi. يعني very little of them in Saudi even, but they don't come close anyway to be able to benefit from the city life. They almost don't live in the city. So the idea then, when oil money came, that naturally they need to deal with the big, they cannot. And it's not profitable to them to deal with the poor. But what happened later, and now, this is for you, especially Hassan, and not for you, Mateen, because you are different kind. Okay. But maybe for Shah also, that Ma'bad al-Jarhi is not at all against Murabaha. I converted Ma'bad al-Jarhi a long time ago. And I discussed with him this in details. He used to go around a little bit around the bush, but he doesn't go around the bush anymore in this. So he doesn't mean Murabaha. He means tawarruq really in this mimicking. Murabaha definitely is not mimicking when you take it as for its reality. But anyway, يعني he means tawarruq here. Why did they tend to make tawarruq? Because they deal with the book, with the big, and dealing with the big also, they have the alternative just beside them, that the conventional bank is offering these big facilities on a way that is easier for them and more privileged for the big. So they want to give them something that is closer to what they got from the conventional bank. So they created this tawarruq as clear mimicking of giving a loan. Yani giving a loan, but instead of giving it immediately, I'll give it to you within 10 minutes. Through tawarruq. Yani we send a message to London market, London metal market, and get that answer from it, because we already arranged everything with the broker there that we deal with. So we, everything is already reserved. We immediately, probably, most likely, I wouldn't swear to that, but most likely the email answer that comes from the broker from London is an automatic email. That's without doing anything, the automatic email. I bought this for you and I sold it for you, and the money is now ready, and make the debit and credit. So they make. So they wait until they got the fax back or the email and make the transaction. It takes 10 minutes or less. Usually, no more than 10 minutes. This is the mimicking that they are doing. And what he says that we need to create regulations. The only regulations can prevent that. And there's no way other than regulations that can do this. Unfortunately, regulations are very often influenced by the mashayikh who prefer money over correctness. And they are paid lucrative amount of money. Now it is being reduced. In fact, used to be a lot more at the beginning. Yani when you talk in the 90s and the beginning.
They're very influential in their communities, so
Yeah.
they can lead.
Now the mashayikh are making their own companies also together to give that advisement to banks. So now it is mostly given through their companies rather than their persons. So we definitely need regulation to make them not mimic those transactions. The natural thing is to really do what they are doing, because they don't finance the SMEs or any, and they don't live with them. Now the problem comes in countries like Pakistan or Jordan, where the need for the SMEs is a lot more, but yet the mentality that was inherited from these banks, and many of the banks you have probably are branches also of the Gulf banks. You have Rajhi and you have Faisal, and right, or you don't have him now, whatever. Dubai, you have Dubai Islamic, and do you have probably, because it exists in Malaysia also, Kuwait Finance House, and so.
Faisal Bank, they have shareholding, Mizan has shareholding, IPB.
Yeah. So you inherit also that mentality. And you have the cheap shuyukh again that will give you the fatwa for the tawarruq. So the fatwa is available, and you have that mentality. The obvious is to make tawarruq. In the study that we made in Qatar, we noticed that at that time there were 4, now 5. The 4 Islamic banks there, about 56% of their transactions are tawarruq. So they do a lot more tawarruq than anything else. And really, I mean, practically they are tawarruq.
Malaysia was once living actually.
Malaysia was in Rina, but they transferred from Rina into tawarruq. So they are now, they please now the mashayikh of the Gulf in that sense. So they can attract the funds from the Gulf, because mashayikh of the Gulf agrees with the tawarruq. I think anything else he has? I think that's all. But that's a reasonable paper reading.
Screening the investors and everything.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, any question, anything, any comment?
That was the 44 pages summary in 5 minutes.
Yeah, so please email it to everybody. And Sami, also email yours also to everybody.
Okay.
If there are any changes to make them and email them. طيب بارك الله فيكم.
I think, Professor, I have a question. So you mentioned about the regulators. Are they supposed to protect the banks, or are they supposed to protect the consumers, the borrowers? And also often we see that in these crises, the banks, the governments create like billions of dollars, $1 trillion to save the banking industry, but they don't show the same passion to protect the borrowers, to help the borrowers. So you think this is better to support the banks instead of the borrowers, or both? Or?
Yeah, I think this is what George Bush, the son, did in America. What you said describes exactly what George Bush, the son, did. In the small countries like Qatar or Kuwait, they made them to save the depositors more than anybody else, really. And depositors usually are not the big ones, because the big ones don't deposit in Qatar or in Kuwait, deposit in Switzerland, not there. Yeah, so these are the depositors are the normal people there. So, but Bush, what he did was really exactly saving the big, rather and don't caring about even the unemployment that resulted from that, because many companies had to reduce their labor force because of the shortage of credit. Because usually labor force is always financed by short-term credit, and short-term credit was dried out kind of in 2008. So in my opinion, this is why we always need, even in an Islamic economy, I believe we need a standby public credit provider. So with that kind of standby public credit provider, we don't allow the financial stress to be transferred to the real economy stress. We replace it. Okay. طيب. Thank you. And see you next week, inshallah. And كل عام وأنتم بخير. I don't think university usually does not change in Ramadan, and I don't see that we need any change anyway. So I mean, to me it's okay, but you Do you think you need it, or do you think that will be consistent with other classes? Aren't there classes that begin at 12:30?
Anyone has class at 1:30? You will.
No, we have 7.
The next class you have what, seminar?
Seminar.
Ah, the seminar is 2 hours, and most classes are 3 hours. Okay, so 10 is fine with me. 10:30 is also okay. Yeah, we will absorb it also. Okay, 10 to 1. Yeah, even at 1:30, you can't make it for Zohar.
10:30. Okay. Because normally we are sleeping after Fajr.
Yeah. Yes, in Ramadan, I also sleep after Fajr, but not directly. And usually I stay. I like to read Quran in the morning, and I like this habit. I don't like to miss it.
To do.
Yeah, I read some Quran, but I sleep after that. Yeah.
Okay, 10:30.
10:30. That's fine. It's fine with me. So we'll see you at 10:30. And next week definitely is going to be Ramadan. Whose pen is that? That's not mine. And maybe Ismail. Was this your pen was here?
Ramadan Kareem.
Yeah, Ramadan Kareem. So next week there will be no gum also in my mouth. And don't say Mubarak. Mubarak. No, Mubarak is the family name of my wife. So I always tease her by asking her, what is your relatives? Is Ramadan Mubarak one of your relatives?
Yes. Ramadan Mubarak.
There is a group in Pakistan that lady, the husband named Rahman. He was saying, Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, father, my kid.
Yeah, but of course that in Malaysia, you have, and in Indonesia also, you have names for girls like Nur Aini.